Thank you so much. Hello, everybody who is joining us. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and start our programming. Oh, there you go. It looks like my bookcase is a little bit weird. I'm just going to take it off. There we are. I think it's because of my curly hair. It's being funky. All right. Hello, friends. Welcome, everybody who's joining our event. We are so happy to have y'all here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker who I've grown so closely and fondly to, somebody I've been looking up. If there is any sort of civic engagement and anything that in our community that it needs changing or has any sort of way of having any participation in communal action, Rosetta is there. If there's anybody who needs volunteer work, she's just there. Everywhere I go, I see her engagement. Everywhere I go, some heart has been touched by Rosetta's work and her story, and just her amazing communal responsibility and actions towards being there for her community. She has been a strong Native advocate, both in Phoenix and in Tempe, where she currently resides, and just been somebody who I've really grown close to over the past years, and really getting to know her story, getting to know her resiliency. And it's important that today we're talking about hope and resiliency and what that looks like in both of our cultures, Rosetta coming from a Native American culture and ourselves talking about it from the Jewish perspective. So Rosetta, let us know a little bit about you, a little bit about your story, about your background and where you come from.
Good morning. My name is Rosetta Walker. I live in Tempe, Arizona. I am Sikangu Lakota from the Rosebud Sioux tribe in South Dakota. Live here in Tempe with my family, my husband of 34 years and our daughter. And I've been a community activist advocate for decades. And it's generally around Native American themes. Save Oak Flat. Currently, we visited Oak Flat Campground, which is outside of Superior, Arizona, which is probably just about 60 miles to the east of us. And, you know, that area is under attack from the mining companies up there. And you have to go see the area. It's a very pleasant day drive. But, you know, that's one aspect of my activism. And in the other vein, I helped with the grassroots efforts for the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls House Bill 2570 that passed at the Arizona legislature last May of 2019. And so that was going to the state legislature, basically showing up, being a warm body, boots on the ground, letting the legislature know that this impact is happening in our communities across the United States and definitely here in Arizona, and how we can be advocates for the families of those that have gone missing and for those that that need protections in our communities. I'm also a strong voter advocate. I am a registered Democrat and have been registered Democrat for decades. And I am a poll worker, which basically means this last primary election, I sat at the polls at the ASU Veteran Center, Vote Center. And we were there, we were set up with our poll center with for 14 days prior to the election. So for the general election, we'll also be set up the ASU Fitness Center. I'm sorry, I said vote, it's Fitness Center. And we'll be there again 14 days before the election. So we'll be there October 22nd through November 3rd. So I do voter registration, and then along with that is being a certified deputy registrar with the Maricopa County Elections Department. And in that capacity, these are all volunteer capacities. These are all volunteer functions that I put my time and energy towards. And before the pre-pandemic, I assisted with the naturalization ceremonies at the Sandra Day O'Connor Federal Courthouse. So the new citizens that took their oath of allegiance and are now US citizens would have the opportunity to register to vote. So they could register to vote, they could sign up for their passports, they could get their social security information all done. It was one-stop shop there at the federal courthouse, and that was every Friday. We would have 2 ceremonies, but of course now that has ceased, but the information still needs to get out there. So just doing voter registration whenever and however we can here in Tempe. So that's just a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm Rosebud Sioux and live down here. And as my story, though, is even though I'm Native American, I grew up in a non-Native home. So I didn't grow up with my cultural surroundings and environment, language, any of that. I was in foster care in South Dakota. So I was raised by a non-Native family, and I did have my sister with me. We were both raised in the same foster care family. So that was a blessing in disguise, because most times families, brothers, siblings, sisters are removed from each other and sent to different families. But I learned that I was Native American probably when I was about 4. And the conversation that my foster mom related to me is that we were sitting at the Indian Health Service to seek medical care, IHS. And I'm sitting there with my foster mom, my white foster mom, and I'm looking around the waiting room, and I noted to her, it's like, you know, we're the only white people here. And so at that time, she decided, well, you know, we better let these girls know that they're Indian, they're Native American. So at that time, you know, being a young girl, 4 years old, they started taking us to powwows, but there was no dialogue on why we were attending these events. You know, it was still foreign to us, even though they were attempting to try to let us know what was going on, that we were part of this Native culture. So I learned it all on my own. As I got older, young adults, you know, I would seek out other Native Americans in the community, and none of us spoke our language because we were all in foster care, and which is part of what we call the 60s scoops, where Native American children were removed from their Native families in the community and placed in foster care. And I don't fault the system for that, because in certain instances, it was better for the child, me being the child, to be away from that home that either had drug, alcohol abuse going on in it. And it was basically to save us. So I'm glad that I was removed, because I was saved. Had I stayed in my biological home, I probably wouldn't have lived past young, you know, 15, 16 years old, because of the abuses going on. So I had to learn how to be Native. I had to learn my culture on my own when I got to college, after college, and I'm still learning. To this day, I'm 60 years old and I'm still learning. So as far as being resilient, we have to be resilient if we want to continue to strive and thrive in our communities. So that's just a little bit introduction on me, and so we'll take it from there.
Thank you so much, Rosetta. So this is going to be a true dialogue space. So we encourage our folks to ask questions and open up here. Thank you, Stu. Thank you, everybody who's on this. And the question we're going to ask is, what does resiliency mean to you, to start off with? And we're going to call on everybody on the chat, both on Facebook and on the Zoom call itself. So the question is, what does resiliency mean to you? And we'll go ahead and start with Stu. Stu, what does resiliency mean to you?
That's a great question. I think about it a lot, actually, because over my lifetime, I feel like I've been on a bit of a roller coaster in terms of life experiences. The very highs that somebody could hope to have, and unfortunately, some of the lowest lows. So, resiliency for me is the ability to be able to learn from both the wonderful things that have happened as well as the not so wonderful things, and literally learn from them to move forward as opposed to dwelling in the past. I can't go back and change all of any really of those circumstances of prior years or decades, uh, in terms of relationships, in terms of experiences, but every one of them is a learning experience. So my own sense of resilience is that I learn from them and I try to move forward, whether it is to not necessarily repeat the same things, or just to be able to sort of cleanse myself of the things that could serve as sort of demons that would kind of haunt me. So that's the way I look at resilience. And I think if I didn't have that capacity, I think I would be at this stage of my life. Uh, I think I would be in a not so good place. But thankfully, I feel that despite all the ups and downs, that I am in as good a place as I could hope to be.
Thank you, Stu. Nona, good to see you. I'm so grateful that you were able to log on here. The question that we have for our dialogue to start us off with is, what does resiliency mean to you?
Well, I think, especially listening to Rosetta's story, I grew up with a lot of childhood trauma and issues, but I was an only child, and I think I learned pretty early. I had a very supportive father and somewhat supportive mother, but just a lot of chaos around me. And I think I just learned that adults in the world were not going to save the world for me, that I needed to, my approach to it was that I was going to have to take care of them. And that it was going to, that the resilience was, what I took on was responsibility, which isn't always a healthy, long time, lifelong cloak to wear. It's burdensome. It's at times you never get to feel like, you cannot be responsible. But on the other hand, I think it was a pretty constructive response to a chaotic situation. And I don't quite know why in my temperament I was able to do that, versus feeling overwhelmed and victimized in my situation. But it was, and I think as at times in my life, I really thought that it was just some sort of personal strength. I think I see now through a lens of privilege more than I see. We didn't have money, but I really underestimated, I think, all my life, the white privilege that I had, because I always have just had an innate sense that anything I wanted to do, I could do if I worked hard enough. And I'm sure that comes from some underlying constant message of, you can, and just go do it. And I'm sure that isn't a message everyone has encouragement for. One thing I would say is I think that the things that happened to me as a child were great empathy providers I'm a retired nurse practitioner, and I think all my life I took into my work a sense of empathy for the underdog, for those people who are in abusive situations, for people dealing with addiction and whose families are dealing with addiction. And so I think that I'm really happy that I had the experiences I had as a child, because I think it formed me as a human in a way that I appreciated a lot.
Thank you so much. Eva, thank you so much for joining us. We have a question right now on resiliency, and what does resiliency mean to you?
Yes, thanks. So to me, it means that you can pick yourself up and dust yourself off when you've been knocked down and reground yourself in who you are so that you can move forward. And I feel like um, our our cultures are what help us reground quickly so that we're not hurt for long by the trouble that comes our way.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think we had somebody else. I don't know if we lost them. Linda, what does resiliency mean to you?
I have to say that much of what Nona articulated, I relate to. But I'd like to repeat something that I've heard from others, which is to make something out of nothing.
Yeah, thank you. The folks on the Rise, Kulik, if you want to answer the question, what does resiliency mean to you?
Hi, yeah, I would agree with everybody's description so far. I think of it as looking at clothes drying in a dryer window, and it's around and around and around, and sometimes our lives feel like turmoil and chaos, and when is it going to end? And then the dryer stops and everything settles, and you pick out your pieces of laundry and they're okay. And I guess that's how I view resiliency. You have to sometimes go through the turmoil to realize how resilient you are.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, we're having some background. Eve,
I love that analogy there. I'm going to remember that one. And then what do we do when our clothes shrink?
Well, that's life.
Rabbi, Rabbi Shmuley, what does resiliency mean to you?
Wow, I mean, it's such a rich topic, and I'm loving listening to everyone. The truth is, these days I'm looking at our foster children and the foster children in our home and how quickly they adapt and evolve, and realizing that it's really built into us, our capacity for resiliency. It's almost like we unlearn resiliency rather than learn it in some cases. How do we return back to those roots of adaptability? And so going into Yom Kippur in just a number of days, I'm thinking that this is the key message right now, to not burn out and to look at injustice and oppression and darkness in the world and keep our fires lit, and to do that through community where we lift up each other.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Rosetta, just diving into what resiliency looks like to you as well, after sharing your story.
Well, being resilient to me is just plugging forward every day, because we wake up, we're given another chance, we're given the breath of life. In my eyes, it's like Creator has said, we're not done yet.
Mm-hmm.
You've only been sharpened by the fire. As my one friend used to tell me, your iron is only being sharpened by walking through the fire. And I always remember that, because it's true. Every day is a gift. Every day. And it's a gift being surrounded by you guys today. An opportunity that Eddie had put out there for us. And I'm learning every day. Until I take my last breath, I will be learning.
I love that. And I think it's clear that we all feel your passion. And so now moving in, because I know our programming is called Hope and Resiliency, from your faith, and you have an interesting story, because you're adapting to going back into your cultural aspects. And in a way, I really feel that with you, as I am in my process of conversion with Rabbi Shmuley. I really resonate with you, as I'm having to learn a lot of the cultural adapting ness of my Judaism and what that looks like, especially right now for the Jewish community going into high holidays. So I really felt that of you saying like, I'm always learning, and like, I'm always learning too. I probably bug Rabbi Shmuley with about 100 questions a day with my Judaism. And I think that's the only way to really learn and get going. Culturally, what have you felt about your culture that that really brings you hope? Something you've really clinged on to. I know you post a lot on social media, a lot of powwow videos and a lot of like different dance videos in the Native community. Can you dive into that a little bit? And then I want to ask, following that, my Jewish community, what in your Jewish community and in your traditions brings you hope?
Yes, I continue to reach out to my Native American community because they are the ones who are teaching me. Because like I said, I didn't grow up in the Native American community, you know, being raised by white foster parents. So still learning the protocols and the teachings and the wisdom shared by the community elders. And that's why I like to surround myself with their presence and their power, because they're willing to share different aspects of their strengths with me. And that's how I then am able to share with younger adults and the youth, and you know, the different protocols. I mean, there are protocols. I did grow up in organized religion. I went to the Presbyterian Church for decades. And then after I was in college, I went to a couple other different organized religions, you know, the Lutheran Church, the Catholic Church. And when I got here to Tempe, I kind of found I liked the Catholic Church. I liked how I liked their protocols. But then I had a poor experience at a Catholic church, and then I turned away from religion, organized religion. I decided, you know, nature is my religion. I don't have to be in 4 walls, confined space to practice religion. I can practice my faith every day. I walk out the door and earth, sky, water, ground, everything is religion. It's right there, just being outside in nature. That is my religion. So I have taken that and I utilize some of my real close older mentors that are Native American. There's one lady, she's with the Lutheran Church. She's the Native American Urban Ministry pastor. And so I like how she envelops the teachings, the cultural teachings in the Native American religion with the pastoral teachings of the Lutheran Church. So, you know, there can be a really good blend. It doesn't have to be black and white. You know, I believe that you can just take bits and pieces of all the different religions and mold them into fitting to how it's going to help you grow and develop. In a nutshell, I use it all. It's there. So just take what I need and grow from it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So now going towards our Jewish brethren here, Stu, if you would like to start us off again, what tradition in your faith and culture brings you hope? Something that really ignites that hope going right now, especially in a time where times are really tough right now, and a lot of us are experiencing a multipleness of just things attacking our communities. Every day we wake up to something new. So Stu, take it away. What brings you hope in your tradition?
I think thanks, Eddie. I think if we look at a short time frame, if we just look back over a year or 3 years or a decade or several decades, I think we make a mistake in thinking that whatever our experiences have been over that period of time is going to set us on an irreversible course for the future. The one thing that we as Jews know is that we have a long tradition, thousands of years, over which time we have experienced the worst horrors that anyone could imagine, but we have also learned and experienced highs, more particularly in the modern era. So you have to look over a longer period of time before you can lose hope, because we have come from lived through tremendous adversity, and yet we're still here, and we are a good and accomplished people who have remained true to our faith and our teachings. And so I think you have to understand that that with a long lens, it's much easier to say, well, it may have not gone quite as well as I would have hoped over the last few years or few decades, but we have every reason to be hopeful looking forward. And, so that's the way I look at it.
Thank you. Linda.
For me, I have to say that I don't often think about hope. I wake up and I know that there is work to be done, and it's almost with a determination as just putting one foot after the other, even through the discouragements. That said, on Erev Rosh Hashanah, reciting the Shehecheyanu, the gratitude for coming to another marker in time, particularly in the presence, either in person or on Zoom, of our younger children and our granddaughters. And we are in a multiracial family, so that's part of what's important to me. So that moment was a hopeful moment for me. And if I could turn it over to my husband, Bob.
I would like to thank Rosetta, because she brought out something that's very Jewish. She looked back at a history that she didn't know and said, I want to be part of that history. And I think we do that all the time. And in fact, Eddie is doing that too, a history that you don't know, Eddie, but it's there and you've claimed it. Something Rambam talked about, you claim that history. And so there's a history of resilience and hope in Jewish tradition that we know of. We know the pictures of the people who've walked out of the camps and were survivors, and the people who I had that was at the March on Washington, the wonderful hope in lots of people, but many Jewish people. Thank you, Rosetta.
Thank you. Rise, I'm not sure if you'd like to dive into that. The question was, what in your cultural tradition brings you hope?
I am Jewish, and I'm a practicing Jew. I have, over the past several years, lost a great deal of faith. My husband had been very ill and has since passed. And I kept, every time he had a test or a CAT scan, I'd hope and I'd pray, and everything was always, going downhill. From it didn't matter what I prayed or hoped for. The disease took control, and it didn't matter what I did. And so I've lost a lot of faith. I'd like to get some of it back again. And as far as hope, especially during this pandemic, I try every day to be hopeful that I'll get to see my children who live nowhere near me, and my grandchildren, and other than on FaceTime. And so I really try to stay upbeat and positive and hopeful, but I no longer pray. Probably more information than you needed.
Well, our hearts are with you, Rise, and we wish for the best for you during these hard times. I
Thank
know
you.
it's really difficult to mourn a loss and to find a space in that context. So we're here for you. Thank you. Okay, Rosetta, moving right along into our conversation, how do you use both of these things to fuel your advocacy and your activism? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I use the activism, and it all comes from a place of knowing that I can make a difference, knowing that I have a voice. We all have a voice. We just have to use it. We have to use that voice to help our fellow man and for the betterment of our community. And when I decided to help out and be on that grassroots level with the missing and murdered Indigenous women, the Arizona House Bill 2570, there was a grassroots group of us. There were eight of us women that were steadfast. We went to 23 different hearings at the state capitol. My fellow colleagues, they testified in front of the House and the Senate. And it all came from very, very personal stories of loss, people that are still grieving, but yet had the resiliency to step up there and share their pain. And so knowing that I was helping to make a difference, helping to be that support, knowing that change needed to be made in order for good to come forward. Yes, we had to share those painful stories. Yes, the people had to show up every day. Yes, we had to cancel prior commitments in order to sit through an 8-hour House testimony. But we did it. And it's doing that because we knew that there was a greater good in it. We knew that the House bill would affect hundreds of people that weren't there sitting in those chairs that day. But that snowball effect is that when that House bill did pass and now it's a law, that all these community members in the 22 different tribes now have a voice. You know, they may not have been there that day. They may not have even known what House Bill 2570 was for, but now they have a voice. So it's being able to reach into the future and say, how is this going to make a difference? You know, what am I doing right now, today, sitting here that can make a difference for our future generations? And that's one of the Native American teachings, is that we always look 7 generations ahead. So we don't look at, you know, current. Yes, I am the current generation. My daughter's the next generation, but we're looking at her children's children's children, and how we view things and how we take steps in our lives to better ourselves, better our communities. And just knowing that you have to have your voice. Everybody has a voice, and you just have to use it intelligently. Because I've been on protests, believe me, in my advocacy, and I had a lady ask me one time, she said, isn't it exhausting? And it's like, what? She said, being an activist. And I'm like, why? She said, well, you're out there on the front lines all the time. It's like, yeah, it can be a little frustrating being an activist. And I have been on some protests where it has been very nitty and gritty, and, you know, with being the police right there with you, but you do what you have to do. And you make allies along the way. Yes, the police were there to arrest us, but yes, we had to use them to protect us. So I've been on both sides of that fence. I haven't been arrested yet, though. So, but, you know, it's just using your voice. I'm, like I said, I'm 60 years old, and I know some are people that are sitting in on this panel. I'm sure you're much older than I am, but we still have to be out there on the streets sometimes. We really do, because it's only by having the what we call boots on the ground, can we be that warm body in the streets that's there saying, we're not going to take this anymore if it comes to that.
I love that. Yeah, and that actually ties into one of my favorite quotes from Rabbi Herschel, who walked with MLK, who said, "I learned to pray with my feet." And that really had stuck to me and has really fueled my Judaism and the reason why I chose this faith to continue. It's something that just makes sense to me, right? And that boots on the ground approach to active change is what really gets us going. So we only have about 5 more minutes before we have to end our programming, folks. So I'm gonna finish off with a message of hope, and I'm gonna ask everybody for a quick snippet of a quick message of hope. What would you say to those who are looking back at 2020 and are saying, how did you get through this? What did you do? What is a message of hope? And we'll start with we'll start with Stu again, and then we'll go along our lines.
I remember toward the beginning of the pandemic, when people were bemoaning the fact that they were having to stay in their homes, were socially isolated. I remember seeing a number of people post on Facebook, "You think that's tough? Think about Anne Frank, who spent all those years in an attic. Think about people at other times who have endured much, much more difficult periods in their life." And, you know, try to put it into perspective. So the only thing that comes to mind in response to your question, Eddie, is it's all a matter of perspective. We tend to think of everything through our own lens, but, you know, it would be very helpful if we could get up about 10,000 feet and look at things on a wider, broader scale.
Thank you. We'll go Linda, Rise, and then Nona.
I'll say something.
I would say no choice. There's work to be done. Get up every morning and do the work.
And I would say, I do say, it's not about me.
Love that. Nona, Rise first, and then Nona. Sorry.
I practice gratitude all the time, and I'm so grateful for my health and where I am in life, and my children are well and healthy, and my grandchildren. And frankly, if I've got that, you've got everything.
Love that. Thank you. Go ahead, Nona.
I would say every situation offers lots to learn about yourself and the world. And so examining the situation instead of just reacting. And also, I think the meta view, the much larger view, we're part of something much larger. We're part of the organism of the planet. We're part of a culture. We're part of many things. And our job is not necessarily to understand it all, but to do what we need to do every day. Like you said, Linda, get up, do what you need to do. Our task is, in famous words, right? Our task is not to finish the job, but we must do what is in front of us to do. We must heal the earth. We must heal the world. Come along. Yeah.
Love that Pirkei Avot. Thank you so much, Nona. And EY, do you want to share message of hope?
I can't do my screen because also dealing with children, but I just wanted to say thank you so much from the Upper West Side of New York, where hope is both present and needed. I was on a call last night with my daughter's school where people were asked to share messages of hope. And one of the things that I realized is to get to justice, you need to have hope plus action equals justice. And you've all provided, I've been taking notes and I'm going to share with my community. So that brings me hope that I get to join into communities like this. Thank you all so much.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And finally, Rosetta, give us, is she on still? Yeah, there she is.
Yep.
Rosetta, give us your final good message of hope that we can take.
Well, we
we have to be present every day. And I think that's been echoed in the conversation here, is that we are present. You have to just get out there and do the best you can. We are doing that. Being present here in this meeting today means that you care. It means that there's something out there that you're still striving to learn, as I am. I am so humbled and grateful to been able to share a few words and messages today. And I thank you, Eddie, and your company there. I really appreciate that. But in essence, we are the master of our universe here. We are writing our own chapters in our lives. And how do you want that chapter to end? How do you want your story to be? When you write your story, when you're telling your story, whose narrative is it? Is it your own personal narrative, or is it someone else's narrative? So never let someone else write your story.
Wow. That hit deep.
Good.
That hit deep. Thank you so much. And I'm just reading out over here the chat, both on social media and on our own chat. Rabbi Shmuley says this was an excellent program. Stu's saying that's an excellent program. And interesting thing that Rabbi Shmuley said was about bringing in voter engagement as well into our work and getting folks civically active. And I think it's a huge thing to also explore in Rosetta's work. Registering so many people to vote, being a huge vocal activist when it comes to making sure that people not only are civically engaged, but that they have access to that engagement. Working with registering our Indigenous youth with Debbie Ness-Manuel and her Morningstar program. I know AJJ has been a huge and proud partner to be able to continue that, and we're probably going to get that rolling back again. So we are extremely proud of that and happy that we were able to hold that space with folks. So I just want to finish off by saying thank you so much, folks, for being on here. This is a great event. I'm grateful to Uri L'Tzedek and Arizona Jews for Justice for making this event possible, and to Rosetta for taking time of her day. And I know everybody felt her passion, and I know this is just but a spark that continues our own flame, right? That even if our own flame is dwindling, or if we feel like we cannot get through things, this is the type of folks that keep us going. A lot of people ask me, Eddie, and I get the same question as Rosetta does. How do you do it? How do you keep going? How are you in the streets? How are you doing programming? And I tell people that it's people that I surround myself that keep me going. It's the people that, like Rosetta, like Nona, like Stu, like Rabbi Shmuley, like Linda, that keep us all going. We are each other's keepers, and that's what will eventually be our triumph in anything that hits us our way. So thank you everybody for joining our call. Please look us up on Facebook to stay up to date with our current events. I appreciate you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.